So what can a parent do? What kind of parenting styles might foster secure attachments if that's kind of the gold standard baseline of what we want attachment to look like? There are two main dimensions in which a parent can parent, basically, and that is behavioral regulation and parental support. So behavioral regulation is how much a parent supervises their child's behavior, how much they discipline, what their expectations are, so how much they regulate their child's behavior. And then support is how much they show that emotional side, that empathy. They recognize their child's their own growing human being, recognizing the child's perspective. So, these two different dimensions are both things that a parent can do, and you can combine these different styles in different ways. So if we combine these two dimensions, again, we can create a table of 4 different possibilities of parenting styles, whether they have high behavioral regulation or low behavioral regulation. So they supervise behavior a lot or not a lot, not at all. And then high versus low parental support, so how empathetic they are for their children. And we have 4 different named styles of parenting. And we're going to go through each of these one by one. But before we do, it's worth noting that just because your parents might be in one box at one time, they can change. This is not a permanent label on them. Given life, family circumstances, passing away of a parent, different stressors can kind of change how parents parent. So let's go through each box. Starting off with number 1, an authoritative parent. So an authoritative parent is high in both dimensions. They have really good parental support and are really consistent in their behavioral regulation. This is the best type of outcome for a child. So they show, appropriate limits. They understand their child's perspective. They lay out clear consequences, and the consequences have purpose to them. They're educational. They help fix behavior as opposed to just punishing. They're consistent and firm in their boundaries, so their children know what to expect. But they're also very empathetic. They're warm. They're reasonable. They understand that you're a human child, and they're going to treat you, with respect. So they communicate their standards. They invite feedback from the child, but there's no question who's running the show. They're still parents, but they create a safe environment for their children. So a classic example of this is Riley's parents from Inside Out. So if you've seen that movie before, her parents are super loving, create a super warm environment, but also are very consistent and very setting appropriate kind of behavioral regulations for Riley as well. So authoritative parent is high in both regards. Second one, though, is what we call authoritarian parent. So authoritarian parents still have consistent behavioral regulations, but they don't have much support. They're not very empathetic for their children. So they're low in parental support, high in behavioral regulation. So this type of parent is the because I said so. I'm not going to pay attention as much to what my child's perspectives are and what they want. I'm going to regulate behavior because I'm the parent and that's what I can do. This is a classic example. If you've seen that 70s show, the father in the show is very much like, I'm not going to show love. I'm going to just discipline you and show you the kind of hard and fast rules, be consistent with those, but not be very emotionally empathetic. So this kind of parenting style will prepare children for the types of limits they're going to meet in society. It's going to help them kind of keep to a system and regulate and kind of build up that tough, thick skin, but they're not getting very much warmth. They're more likely themselves to then use harsher punishments on their own children. And they might be more rebellious because they're not really giving love. They're not given love at home, so they have to kind of go elsewhere to kind of seek that comfort. So we know that children from these authoritarian parents are less likely to have these externalizing behaviors like drug abuse, but they do tend to develop some internalizing problems, things like depression, because they're not used to getting this support. Third is an indulgent parent. So this is someone who is the opposite of that. They have such high parental support, they're super warm and understanding, and they take your perspective and they're there to help you, but they're not really consistent with discipline. So this is classic, like the mean girls mom who's like, I'm a cool mom. Do you need anything? Let me get you snacks. But then also kind of lets their children run the show and do what they want. This is an example too of just a parent who doesn't have very strong discipline, but you know, loves their children well and still tries to give them what's best. So they're very permissive, they're warm and loving, but they don't really tell their children no, and they monitor their children less. They don't regulate their behavior, which tends to lead children to have higher levels of this kind of um, abuse, externalizing abuse. They tend to resort to things like nicotine, cigarettes, alcohol abuse, antisocial behavior, because they're not really learning the skills on like being able to regulate their behavior. And then the last parenting style is kind of rare, but it's an uninvolved parent. This is low parental support and low behavioral regulation. And it's typically due to family circumstances, things like unexpected illness, divorce, psychopathology, substance abuse, kind of negative consequences that affect your children. So this is when children are basically ignored. They kind of have to fend for themselves. Um, it might, in extreme cases, lead to things like social services intervening and kind of putting the child in a foster care system or something to kind of give them a better support system. But children with uninvolved parents tend to have the highest rates of smoking, drinking, kind of coping mechanisms, antisocial behavior, that type of thing. So they're a little less skilled and prepared for interacting with the environment. So as you might expect, as we kind of mentioned in the different descriptions, as the parenting style gets less involved, a child's ability to interact socially and emotionally in the environment gets a little worse. They have a higher antisocial behavioral score. And you'll kind of notice the steepness, the slopes of these lines also changes. So these parents that are able to have higher behavioral regulation, they have consistent discipline methods. As the child develops and gets older, their antisocial level doesn't increase as much. Whereas if they don't really have much discipline, that slope is a lot steeper. So as they age, they get even worse over time.